Hey everybody. So I want to offer some commentary on the Marilyn Manson, Evan Rachel Wood situation. I did this already in one video called Marilyn Manson and Cancel Culture. If you haven't seen that already, I advise you to watch it so you can get some background. But in short, I was someone who began wholeheartedly believing the accusations against Marilyn Manson, which was heartbreaking for me because he was definitely a musical and artistic inspiration of mine and certainly a beacon of hope in my teenage years. But gradually, I came around to an opposing point of view, and I am, you know, I'm waiting with cautious optimism to see how his lawsuit plays out. That said, I don't want to be somebody who is diving into every little detail of every single thing that's said every time, somebody related to this opens their mouth doing a video or something like that. The Colonel Kurtz channel, as many people have already noted, is already doing that and doing a superlative job of it. What I would like to do is try to focus on commenting in the areas where I might be able to provide something insightful or helpful. And what's interesting, I have a perspective that is probably going to not be satisfying for anybody on either side of this discussion. And knowing that to be the case, that tells me it's most likely the right position to take. But here's the thing. As somebody who is supporting Marilyn Manson in this, I want to put forth the idea that we need to have tremendous, tremendous sympathy for Evan Rachel Wood. And I know that sounds bizarre in light of everything that's gone on, that she has created this one-sided hit piece of a documentary, but and that she is now she's now advocating and working against Marilyn Manson in a very a very extreme manner. But I want to maintain the idea that through it all, she deserves our sympathy. And there are two reasons that I feel this way. The first is strategic, and the other is empathetic, if you will. I think that, if you look at what, and by the way, I've not seen the documentary yet. I don't currently have HBO Max. I used to. I unsubscribed from it a while back. I'm tempted to resubscribe so I can watch it for the sake of having an informed opinion. But at the same time, I don't want to contribute to HBO seeing metrics coming in where people are resubscribing and immediately, or subscribing and immediately going back to watch this, going to watch this documentary, because I think that that's going to only encourage them. Anyway, so I don't want to talk too much about the documentary itself. The documentary makes, the producers of the documentary have made no bones about it being entirely one-sided. So other people who watched it can comment on that. But here's why I think that we need to be sympathetic towards Evan Rachel Wood, in spite of everything. Colonel Kurtz did a video on Wood's, Evan Rachel Wood is a mouthful to say, but ERW's interview feature story in The Cut magazine. And she pointed out one very interesting thing. Now, they make a few mentions of the lawsuit, and people have started asking Evan Rachel Wood about the lawsuit, and she's kind of been playing it off as I can't talk about that right now. And fair enough. If I were her attorney, I would tell her not to, say anything at all about it publicly. But already in the Cut article, which is kind of the most, I think, the most recent major magazine interview that was done since the lawsuit was filed, we start to see we start to see Evan Rachel Wood already distancing herself from Ilma Gore. And if you read the lawsuit that Marilyn Manson has filed, it's interesting because it really only mentions Evan Rachel Wood tangentially and focuses probably about 85% of its legal muster on Ilma Gore. And I think that, certainly Marilyn Manson has not taken this lying down. Certainly he and his attorneys have been working on building a very, very strong case in this matter, and they're not going to take it lightly, and they're not going to risk screwing it up. So I think that they have a pretty good bead on the situation and on the power dynamic between Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore. And I think they probably realize that Ilma Gore is the person running the show here. And think about something. Step back for a minute from the major Hollywood celebrity personalities involved here and think about something. Imagine if you are Marilyn Manson and somebody that you've had this close, intimate relationship with that lasted a number of years, someone you've had this close, intimate relationship with has suddenly turned on you in this manner. He probably has, I would imagine Manson more than really anybody in this situation, has a more dynamic view of Evan Rachel Wood. He knows the highs and the lows, the positives and the negatives, the good and the bad, everything. He knows the full picture of somebody, the picture that you get of somebody when you are in a relationship with them, when you are the person closest to them in their lives in that manner. And I think he probably, more than anybody, I think the people rooting for him have a very cynical view of Evan Rachel Wood right now, and understandably so. But I think he, more than anybody, probably perceives that the person he knew, that he was attracted to, that he fell in love with, all of that has been corrupted. And probably realizes that, probably understands a lot more than his public would understand, that this is likely more the result of Ilma Gore steering the ship than Evan Rachel Wood. And so I think with that understanding, he and his people have probably been able to get at a better perspective on what's actually going on here. Right now, Evan Rachel Wood is becoming the face of a tremendous amount of anger and ridicule and derision in the gothic, industrial, heavy metal, hard rock world, because she is the most prominent face in all of this. But Ilma Gore, it seems to be the person who's actually in charge of everything. And so that is why I come around to the pragmatic, strategic reason why we want to be sympathetic to Evan Rachel Wood. Why, even though we as Manson supporters should be sympathetic to her. And that is because in that article, you can tell that she's already distancing herself from Ilma Gore, even though, as Colonel Kurtz has pointed out and others have pointed out, she and Ilma Gore have been joined at the hip through all of this. And now suddenly she's trying to distance herself. So she probably realizes that she probably feels like she's, shoulders deep in shit and Ilma Gore is chin deep in shit. And I would imagine that what will happen is the legal, there are things that she and Ilma Gore have done that have been, tremendously heinous, or accused of doing, I should say. Obviously, it still remains to be proven in court, but that they are alleged to have done that are extraordinarily heinous, that are criminal even, and have very strong criminal implications. If they are to be charged with impersonation of law enforcement, if they're to be charged with distribution of child pornography, some of these other things, if that plays out, then what you're going to have is a situation where Ilma Gore is going to be set up as the primary operator in all of this. And Evan Rachel Wood will have one of two options at that point. She can remain loyal to Ilma Gore and go down with the ship, or she can cop a plea bargain and turn, cop a plea bargain, turn state's evidence, and turn state's evidence and turn on Ilma Gore and hopefully get a reduced sentence. If you support Manson, you should be supporting the long-term goal of her ultimately deciding to go down that road. That's the strategic aspect of it. Now, the empathetic aspect of it comes from understanding how these kind of relationships, like what she's in with Ilma Gore, how these things work. Let's entertain for a moment the idea that Evan Rachel Wood really is this Bambi-eyed innocent that she portrays herself as. If she was vulnerable to getting manipulated by Marilyn Manson, she can be vulnerable to getting manipulated by other people as well. And unfortunately, that sort of thing happens a lot in the entertainment industry. And it's interesting because what they've, from reviews that I've read of Phoenix Rising and all of that, what they talk about, they make it a big point to point out that Evan Rachel Wood was a person with a tremendous amount of personal emptiness and personal, kind of a lack of a sense of self, and that left her vulnerable to being taken advantage of. That I actually have no trouble. I have no trouble believing that because that is actually a relatively common phenomenon among actors. Actors are people who are looking for roles to embody, and it takes a certain personal emptiness to really be able to step into that role, to take it over, to really embody that role. And so there are a lot of lost souls in the entertainment industry for that very reason. There's a great Kurt Vonnegut short story. I believe it's called "Who Am I This Time?" or something like that. I can't quite remember the title. It was made into a movie starring, I believe, Christopher Walken, but it's about a man who is a janitor in a small town, and he's this totally unimportant, unimportant, introverted, no personality, empty sort of person. But when he performs in the local community theater, he becomes the most incredible actor that anyone's ever seen. And Vonnegut is speaking to a very real reality about actors, that you have to have that emptiness. And the reason I bring that up, the reason I say that that's an empathy that we should have and we should maintain for Evan Rachel Wood, is because there are examples of other people getting manipulated this way. For example, a really prominent one recently would be Allison Mack and Keith Raniere. So if you don't know about NXIVM, NXIVM was a cult being run. It was a kind of self-improvement career seminar-oriented cult being run by a man named Keith Raniere. And there is a tremendously good a very good documentary about that I think is also on HBO Max. But it's absolutely, or maybe it's on Netflix. Anyway, whatever the case, it's absolutely worth watching. And I think it is on HBO. I'm sorry, I'm going to get distracted by that. There are a few, and I want to make sure I recommend the right one. But anyway, whatever the case, the story of NXIVM is worth looking into, because NXIVM was set up as this kind of like sort of Scientology meets career motivational seminars, multi-level marketing kind of conglomeration of out there cult concepts that Keith Raniere was using to uh, absorb and manipulate very high-ranking people in Hollywood and show business and the entertainment industry and that kind of thing. Outstanding among them was Allison Mack, who people may remember as Chloe Sullivan on Smallville, and that was her big thing. And she got involved with NXIVM. Keith Raniere met her and was instantly smitten with her, and in his horribly charismatic way, he immediately seduced her, and they started a relationship. And within the cult of NXIVM, what Keith Raniere tasked Allison Mack with doing was bringing women together, bringing women into a sort of inner world, an inner cabal within NXIVM that was supposed to be, like a women helping women sisterhood kind of organization within NXIVM, but it was really just a sex trafficking ring, procuring women to be trafficked into the personal harem of Keith Raniere. Allison Mack was the ringleader of this. She did things that were absolutely horrible. She did things that were horrible. She destroyed people's lives. She mutilated people's bodies because she made women take a brand to be a part of this. And she manipulated, intimidated, coerced people in horrible, horrible ways. What she did was terrible, and she should not escape punishment for what she did. And indeed, she did not. She is currently serving a prison sentence for what she did. However, there was an understanding that, very reasonable understanding from the law enforcement entities investigating NXIVM, that she was a pawn, ultimately a pawn in Keith Raniere's larger plan. And she turned state's evidence. She turned state's evidence in exchange for a lighter sentence. And I think that that's entirely reasonable, because it does respectfully factor in the fact that she was being manipulated and she was being controlled. This is a real dynamic that can occur. And when people find themselves in this sort of dynamic, it's important to remain sympathetic to them, as horrible as they may be, because that sympathy is going to be the number one thing that helps them get out. And I know that among Marilyn Manson fans right now, there's a tremendous amount of contempt for Evan Rachel Wood that's making them want to cast Evan Rachel Wood to the wolves, burn her at the stake, all of that stuff. I understand that that's there, but it will not. If you care about truly doing right, then we need to acknowledge a hierarchy of evil within all of this and realize that it would really appear to be Ilma Gore who is the person that is actually antagonizing Marilyn Manson. Evan Rachel Wood finds herself in a very precarious situation because she's now the public. It's not just, I was going to say she's on a sinking ship. It's not just that she's on a sinking ship, she is the ship. And so she finds herself in a very precarious place. If we want the good ending, the best possible ending in this, if we want to get the good ending instead of just the neutral ending or the sort of good ending, we want it to be the ending where Evan Rachel Wood is not just punished for her actions. Now, I'm not saying she shouldn't escape culpability for what's happened here, but she genuinely takes responsibility for her actions. I don't expect Ilma Gore to do that. Ilma Gore does not strike me as someone who can do that. But we should be rooting for Evan Rachel Wood to have a redemption arc in this narrative. And I know it's difficult to be rooting for that now, but inside Darth Vader is still Anakin at the end of the day. And inside of Anakin is still that little boy that had good intentions, wanting to free his mother and save the slaves. Free his mother and free the slaves. My point being that there is evil and there is the corruption of the good. And we find ourselves in a place where the moral high road comes in differentiating the two. And so, lastly, I want to say, I personally, without going too much into my own backstory, my own personal life, I know what it's like to be manipulated by a psychopath. And I'm not trying to diagnose Ilma Gore. I'm just saying, if this proves to be the ultimate outcome, if I had to bet money on how this is going to go, that would be, well, I wouldn't bet money on it even if I had to, but my guess for the most likely outcome in this situation is that is what we will see. When we start picking apart the layers, we're going to find Manson, the largely innocent party. I'll get to why I believe that in a minute. We're going to have Evan Rachel Wood, the wrongdoer, the well-intentioned wrongdoer that has ultimately been manipulated into doing some heinous things, and Ilma Gore, who is the actual force of evil in all of this. That is my position. That's my take on it. I know what it's like to be manipulated by a psychopath. I know what it's like, again, without going too much into my own story, I know what it's like to be manipulated by a psychopath. I know what it's like, the way they dominate your reality, the way they are so good, so instinctively, effortlessly good at coming to reshape your reality that you find yourself saying things and behaving in ways you never thought you would. And I know from personal experience that, that emptiness that propels me as a musician, as a performer, as an artiste in various mediums to get up there and say, hey, everybody, look at me, and try to fill that inner void with attention, that same thing that I just described, that's in me. And psychopaths know how to take advantage of lost souls like you wouldn't believe. And that is what I believe is happening here. So hopefully that makes some sense. Now, what I was talking about where I say Manson being largely innocent, another video I would like to do at some point would be talking about, because I want to talk about how my perspective on this evolved over time. And I want to talk about the real problems in Manson's personal life and professional life that have found him, that have put him in a position where he comes off as unsympathetic, because there are things that he has done, as much as I am a fan of his, there are things he has done in his career that are not acceptable. And I want to talk about that too, because that's a piece of the puzzle that I think, we've got, like I said, we've got two hardline polarized positions. But I want to take that third position to kind of try to put some new perspective on it. And I say that, again, as someone who is rooting for the Marilyn Manson lawsuit to be successful. And I say rooting for because it's my hope that that's how everything comes out, but it has to get to court. We have to get all of the information. It has to get to court. Like I said, I'm on his side as it stands, but everything's got to come out. And if we want to affect positive change here, there's two things that have to happen. There are going to be people that are going to be in attack dog mode about this. I do think that Colonel Kurtz channel, she's been in absolute attack dog mode for a year now about this issue. And that has been, I think, really good. So good that Manson's attorneys saw fit to mention her channel in the legal brief itself. So I think she's done a lot of good work that way. However, There has to be a balancing act. There has to be balance to the force. And as we go forward, we have to be looking at perspectives on this that will give us greater ground and greater moral clarity as we go forward. We have an opportunity here to counterbalance the world of cancel culture, or counteract the world of cancel culture and the world of call out culture. But as Friedrich Nietzsche so accurately put it, when you go to dispel demons, you must take care that you do not become one yourself. So let's try to not just win the battle and not just win the war, but elevate this. Let's take the opportunity to elevate this discussion and elevate the cultural consensus around this to something higher and something better. That, more than anything, that's the good ending. Let's get the good ending.